participants. My group is the Blue Rangers. It consists of Kandistan, Peter Mohammed, and myself, Anil Prasad. Very small group. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about P.S. Skinner. And if you will look on your desk, you will see a pre-test. And I'll ask you to take about 45 seconds and try and complete it as quickly as possible before we move on. Notice at the bottom of the sheet it says, please do not turn over. We kindly ask you to follow those instructions at this time. Okay, so given that extensive pre-test, we move on a little. Okay, all right. So when you all hear Skinner, what do you all think of? Anybody before this class? Anybody? Skinner Pop. That's right. That's what we thought. Skinner Pop. But no, we're not going to talk about Skinner Pop today. We're going to talk about Burroughs Frederick Skinner. Who is this? And what we're going to do a little bit is I'll give you a quick bio of him. We'll talk about his perspectives on education, and then we'll give some examples of his use in the classroom. So who's this guy? He's an American psychologist. He was born in 1904 and died in 1990. He was a Harvard professor of psychology, and he was multifaceted in that he, in addition to being a behaviorist, a psychologist, he was also an author and an inventor. And which was pretty cool in that, one of his inventions is that he actually created a missile guidance system using pigeons. However, it was not adopted by the US. Maybe they decided that they would use radar instead. Okay? In terms of his educational theory, which is what we'll be talking a little bit about today, he believed that learning is a function of change in overt behavior. And he used animals and food, and with food being a positive reinforcement in these animals to try and change their behavioral patterns. So I'll now hand over to Candice, who can do
Right. So Skinner, he basically derived two laws. The first one is on conditioning, which basically was a response, if it is followed by a reinforcement stimulus, tends to be strengthened. And as a result, that action tends to be repeated again. However, with extinction, which was his second law, if the response is not rewarded by a reinforcing stimulus, that action likely is to be extinguished. So now Phaedra would go into the experiment that he did with rats concerning his theories.
All right, so we're going to show a short video. And throughout the video, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. So pay attention and hopefully you won't gaff up the audio.
Skinner in the mid-20th century inherited the mantle of the father figure of behaviouralism from Watson, of Thorndike and his law and effect. He devised the learning theory, operant conditioning, which can be defined as a learning process in which the consequences which follow a response determine the likelihood that the behaviour will be repeated in the future. So behaviour is strengthened when it's being reinforced, therefore more likely to recur, and behaviour is weakened when it's being punished, less likely to occur. So Skinner in the mid-20th century.
All right, question one. So I'm going to ask this question, you need to raise your hand, and we're going to go with the fastest correct answer. What is one conditioning event that causes an action to be encouraged to occur? Yeah. There we go.
Ah, chocolate for you.
Good job. That's okay. Thank you. All right. We'll continue.
So Skinner devised the Skinner box to identify how the consequences of actions affected future behaviour. So, in terms of some of the key aspects of the Skinner box, it contained a lever that was used for both positive and negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement in the form of food was delivered through a food dispenser after lever pressing. There was an electric grid on the floor that would deliver painful electric current. There was a light that when flashed was a warning signal to the rat that the electric current was about to come. So in order to provide motivation for behaviour,
Okay, sorry. Question 2. Remember, we're going for fastest correct answer. How did Skinner use positive reinforcement in his experiments?
Reward, food.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Skinner used hungry rats that were placed in his Skinner box. And much like the cats in Thorndike's puzzle box, initially their behaviour was random until they inadvertently hit the lever, which resulted in the immediate rewarding of a food pellet. Now, it didn't take the rats long to learn that lever pressing resulted in the positive outcome of receiving a food reinforcer. So therefore, the consequence of receiving food, which was the desirable stimulus, ensured that the lever pressing behaviour would be repeated again. This is positive reinforcement. Now, initially Skinner used a continuous reinforcement schedule which results in the fastest rate of acquisition, i.e. every time the rat hit the lever, a food pellet would be delivered. Then later on he went to a partial schedule, and I'll go through this in a future YouTube clip.
Alright. So we're 2/3 way through. We have one more question left. Try to keep up and not talk. Whoa!
You're on that.
Hungry rats on that field. Reinforcement here. Alright, so how does Skinner use negative reinforcement in his experiments? So I'm going to discourage pre-answering by disqualifying that. Give him an electric shock. Alright, there we go. So, what this video showed here was the culmination of everything that he did, where the mouse, well, rat, initially pressed the lever to get food. The rat learned pressing the lever, he gets food, and then Skinner, being himself, decided to try and discourage by that behavior by saying, after you have learned to press this lever and get food, I'm not going to shock you when you press this lever. So then the rat eventually stopped pressing the lever because it knows, all right, I'm going to get shocked. And then he went further and said, I'm not going to shock you if you don't press the lever, just to show that these different types of actions would affect a particular behavior. The rats were so clever, eventually they started to detect when this light was lit, a shock was coming, I pressed the lever to stop the shock from happening. And then he would randomly, when he wants food, press the lever when a particular light comes on and then get food. So this type of behavior was shown to be very effective in rats, and then we actually do this with our students. You don't shock them. Maybe we should say, all right, test not. But we do this with our students when we have the same kind of teaching strategy. And then they come and they expect to sit down and snore. In class, okay, I'm just going to get knowledge from my teacher and I'm not going to do anything. So when you bring this disruptive type of technology in that is associated with positive reinforcement, that is what will promote that active learning type of strategies that we're focusing on. So I try to do this in class. But I don't give out chocolates because I have a class of 70-something. But by calling on their names, by getting to know a student, by congratulating them for participating, you start to encourage a certain behavior in the class. So this is something that we think you can now latch onto if you want to apply this particular strategy in your teaching exercises. Alright, so I'm gonna pass you back to Candace, who's now gonna bring us full round.
So, if you turn over your paper of your pre-test, you will see the post-test. So you can take approximately 45 seconds again to evaluate what you learned by this exercise. So I guess my 45 seconds is nearing its end. So in summary, we just wanted to specify that learning, we also evaluate our human behavior by learning from our environment. And in the Skinner study, we see that food was used as a positive reinforcement when the rats exhibited a particular behavior, such as pressing the lever. And they basically learned to repeat that lever, which was his main theory of operant conditioning. Also, there tends to be very little difference between the learning that occurs in humans as well as animals. Therefore, this research can also be applied to humans, such as our students in our classrooms. And he basically proposed that the way that humans learn behavior is also the same way that the rats has learned. So therefore, all these theories we can now apply to our class and our students. Thank you.